Hi, this is Elliot Haspel and welcome to another edition of Best Practices Weekly. Today we're going to be talking about best practices for independent reading blocks. And this comes from an article on The Reading Teacher in which a professor went and did an observational study of 8 master teachers, 8 highly effective teachers, and saw them doing their independent reading blocks for their students. And tried to draw some universal best practices. This actually also brought in research and a lot of the academic best practices as well, and synthesized them into some conclusions that kind of can work across the board. Now obviously every teacher's independent reading is structured slightly differently to his or her particular style and to his or her students' particular needs, but these are broadly best practices that should be effective across the board. And again, this is a combination of both observational results and also cross-referenced with the academic research. So, the first practice that all of these master teachers did was manage to maintain this balance between student empowerment and teacher support. So even though it's called independent reading, it was never totally independent. And this was shown in a couple of different ways. So for example, with book choice, students were definitely encouraged to follow their own interests and to read books about things that they wanted to read about, but that simultaneously were trained and were shown how to pick books that are at their level, how to pick books that are going to be able to, they're going to be able to persevere through and finish. So these are things ranging from the old, 5-finger rule, see how many words you don't know in a book, to thinking about how to check out a book's back cover, all of the various ways to think about, is this book a good book for me, while still maintaining choice. Also, teachers provided behavioral support, so they modeled what did it look like to do independent reading, all the way down to how do I choose a spot to sit, and what do I do, like how should I keep myself focused on my reading and not get distracted by my friend or by, thinking about something else. And at the same time, though, once they had done that modeling, once they had shown the behaviors, they let the students choose their own spots to sit in, let their students really choose their own way of sort of continuing to keep themselves focused during the block. So again, there's this real balance, this line between providing guidance and also empowering students to have controlled choice. Next, all of these master teachers focused on reading growth. So, independent reading time is for sure a great time just to give students a chance to read, to indulge their love of reading, to really just make them lifelong readers. But every one of these teachers also had a goal for the block and to improve the reading skills of their students. And so, this didn't have to sacrifice the love of reading part, but it was definitely more intentional. And this showed up in 2 main ways. One was in student accountability. So there was a guiding question, for example, that a lot of the teachers used that students were asked to think about while they were reading. Like, describe a character in the book that you're reading. And that just gives students a learning objective with which to focus their thinking and to be thinking more deliberately. And then, or, for example, the students might be asked to partner up and share a reflection about what they were reading at the end of the time, or keep a log, track their progress, share with the class, any number of ways, but something that holds them accountable to a learning goal. And again, there's research to back this up that shows that without that, independent reading time doesn't have much of a benefit in terms of improving reading skills. The other thing here was that teachers use this opportunity to do reading instruction. So during the independent reading time, even though again it's technically called independent reading, they would call over small groups to do small group instruction. They would do mini conferences with students. They would use this opportunity to listen to students read and do quick informal evaluations of where the students' reading skills were at. Or they would tie in the independent reading time to whole class reading lessons. So independent reading was not this vacuum in the middle of the day, but rather something that connected to the overall reading instruction going on in the class. Interestingly, none of these master teachers use the independent reading time to do their own reading. This is something that some teachers do, just sort of show what it looks like to be reading independently, but this is not something any of these master teachers did, and the research tends to back up that it's actually a more effective use of the time to be doing some sort of instruction, whether that's individual, small group, even a whole group, during the independent reading block. The third main universal best practice is that these were all student-based programs. What that means is that the teachers were willing to adapt the traditional idea of independent reading to meet the needs of individual students and their particular students. So, for example, independent reading is traditionally something that is done silently, but these master teachers were willing to let students either who were younger, so first graders, or students who were struggling readers, even in the older grades, whisper read out loud, because that could be a helpful thing. So they were allowed to, sort of talk quietly, read to themselves quietly, if that was going to help them actually be able to process the text in front of them. And second, teachers even let peer interactions happen. So this was modeled, but letting peers, if there's a question like, what does this word mean, or how do I pronounce this word, or, I don't understand what's going on in this part of the book, letting students actually interact with one another during independent reading can be another boon to learning. Some teachers went as far as to deliberately group the stronger readers with less strong readers, so that the less strong reader could get help if they were reading along. And then there were times when teachers specifically didn't let that happen, when they wanted it just truly to be independent reading. But the key here is that it was highly adaptable. So, again, a balance between student empowerment and teacher support and guidance, a focus on reading growth in addition to just increasing the love of reading through independent reading, and making sure that independent reading is a very student-based time, and that you're willing to adapt and adjust for the individual student needs, seem to be these three large buckets of best practice that are going to help you get the most out of your independent reading block. So, thanks for watching, and happy teaching.